Alright, good evening everyone. I wanted us to look at phrases closer tonight, and so we're going to start out by looking at the four types and really just kind of getting a familiarity with these different types and what they are and how you can identify them, because on our exercises people were having a difficulty that I think is legitimate. I don't blame anyone at all with identifying what's a clause and what's a phrase, And so I want to show you some of the four types of phrases and how they pretty much maintain this common appearance across the board. So let's get started. Alright, so for our four types, we have number one, the prepositional phrase, okay? And we'll review what that is more specifically here in just a moment. And then we have the infinitive phrase. And that looks like almost the same across the board, okay? Next we have the participial phrase. We'll look at those closer as well. And then lastly, I'll try and fit it, we have the gerundive phrase, okay? Gerundive and participial look very familiar, but it's their part of speech and how they function in that sentence that really affects the type that they are. So let's jump into prepositional phrases. So for a prepositional phrase, one of the dead giveaways is the fact that it will contain a preposition in it. So it's in the name and it's also in the phrase. Now some common prepositions might be kind of fresh in your mind because of... Alright, so some indicators that we have a prepositional phrase which just shows a relationship. Geez, that's not clear. It shows a relationship between a noun and a pronoun, or a noun and a noun. So there we go, relationship. And one of the ways that it's been taught to me or described to me is this concept of the mountain. Okay, so you have these mountains, and over here, let's put a little snow on these mountains. Let's get hopeful that we can have some more snow and rain in our future. And anything that you can say about the mountain will be a preposition. So if I say something like, let's go around the mountain, under the mountain, above the mountain, beside the mountain, between the mountain, those are all examples of prepositions. And it just helps to think about it in that way, because it basically orients yourself to the mountain, and all of the ways that you can describe that are using prepositions. So let me just show you some examples of prepositions here. So here are some samples, and I think for many of these, particularly through beyond and from, are ones that you'll typically use in sentences that establish relationships between ideas, and they could be used, for instance, to vary your sentence beginnings. And so just keep an eye out for it. In our exercises, you'll be able to see some examples, but these are prepositions, and they are involved. And it's not an exhaustive list, so not exhaustive, meaning it doesn't show every example of a preposition, but it does show some examples. So we'll be able to see that and get a little used to it. Let's look at our next phrase type. So for infinitives, for infinitive phrases, participial phrases, and gerundive phrases, they look very similar to verbs, and they have many of those characteristics. They'll take objects, but they have different forms. For an infinitive, you basically have this ongoing thing that just seems to go on forever, or to not really have an end. So if I say something like to buy a hat, it's like whatever leads up to this is just basically an action that's ongoing, that just kind of goes. Gosh, I'm sorry, that sounds repetitive. But if I say something like, he went to buy a hat. Or if I say something like, let me see, I'm going, I am going to go to school, or I am going to jump on that opportunity, like to jump on the opportunity, or pretty much any signal with this. It can be a preposition, but in this case, it creates an ongoing case of, for instance, buying. So if I say something like, I bought a hat, that wouldn't be an infinitive. But if I'm going to buy a hat, or if I were to say something like, um, it wouldn't sound right, but you buy hat, you know, you purchased, or I would like you to buy a hat. But look at that, even then, I create the infinitive construction. So it has a lot to do with verbs and time, and the big key indicator is this, the fact that you'll see that. And for instance, you could put this at the beginning of your sentence, so I could say something like, to understand the mysteries of of the universe, man needs to merely look up at the sky. I don't know. Like you can do a lot with it, and part of it is that you can shift them to the beginning. So we'll be able to experiment with that. But two. It's a big indicator. That's supposed to be an arrow. Let's make it a really one of those big arrows. Okay. Oh, there. Okay, it's starting to look like a house and an arrow. Maybe not. Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's horrible. All right. So participial phrase. Participial phrase is basically going to be a phrase, and it's not the only distinguisher that you need to keep in mind, but it's a phrase that has an ing ending in it. So if I were to say something like seeing the danger, or playing chess, or beating the drum, you can see those examples utilizing the ing ending. However, the difference between a participial phrase and the other phrase with the ing ending, the gerundive phrase, is their use. So I know that our grammatical knowledge might be a little fuzzy for some of you, but basically a participial phrase is used as an adjective or an adverb. Okay? And that is the exclusive purview of participial phrases. And it basically allows you to distinguish whether or not it's a gerundive phrase or a participial phrase. So let me just show you an example of some participial phrases in sentences, and then we'll go into gerundive phrases. All right, so here's an example. They arrested the man driving the car. Now, driving the car, for instance, is a adjective modifying man. So which man? The man driving the car. Okay, and that's how you would know that this is a participial phrase rather than a gerundive phrase. Now we're going to practice that. That's probably the ugliest thing I've ever written in a video. I'm sorry. That says platonic, patriarchal. No. Participial. Yes. And we can see that based on its use. So adjectives are something that I think you guys will be able to, feel pretty comfortable with, and similarly with adverbs, and just getting used to identifying them, so that way you can adjust them. So for instance, we'd sound a bit Yoda-like, but we could say the man driving the car was the one they arrested. Now, often you'll create passive voice constructions, but that's not really what we're going to focus on now if you move things around like this. But just to give you an idea, you could still move around this, this type of phrase. It just takes a little bit more manipulation. All right, so a gerundive phrase. Gerundive phrase has the same ing ending that begins the phrase, but it's used as a noun. So let me just show you an example of that. We could say something like, Driving his car is his favorite activity. Okay. Now, if you want to figure out, like, all right, so how do you know it's used as a noun? Well, you say what is his favorite activity, and you say driving his car. It's a noun. I mean, it's used as a subject of this verb or of this sentence, and we can basically answer the question of what. Whereas on the previous one, you would say which man, for instance, and you would just basically clarify or add additional information to it and modify that noun man. So here, what is driving this car is, and so you have to use this here as a noun, and that's basically what separates a participial phrase and a gerundive phrase in this basic sense. So what we're going to be doing next class is basically identifying what type of phrase it is and trying to move it around. It's going to take a little bit more work than just a simple clause. So I'm excited to see how we're going to do it. There are many special cases. Please, phrases can go very deep. So this is just an introduction to the 4 types, and we'll start to apply it. Good luck, everyone.